Greetings, beloved family, and thank you all once again for joining us here this evening on Occult Science Radio. I am Curtis Davis, a.k.a. the Illuminated One, and tonight we have with us a powerhouse, who I've been chasing for a very long time, Brother Horace Butler, who wrote a very groundbreaking book, When Rocks Cry Out. And for those of you who have not had the privilege of reading that book, I suggest you get it ASAP. Believe me, you're going to come across some information in that book that they did not teach you in grade school and they didn't teach you in college. Okay, so that's why we have to thank the universe for, I call brothers like this, for prophets. Brother Horace, are you there?
Curtis, I am here.
Welcome home. Make yourself at home. You are officially a family member. And we have so much to cover. But, brother, being that this is your first time with us, before we get into the real good stuff, just give us a brief background on yourself and what led you to where you are now, and what led you also to write such a great book.
Well, let's start with the writings. I think that's what the audience would be most interested in. I'm pretty much a common man myself. I can't say that I went looking for this. In fact, it was almost as though the writings were manifesting, and I happened to be at a place that saw some of the things coming to the surface. Channel 13 in this area, PBS, had run a documentary called The West, and it was a documentary talking about the western part of North America. And I saw that, and I sat straight up on the bed when I heard them mention blacks that were in the West, and they were calling the blacks the Kali. And I'm imagining Kali or Cali. And that got my attention. And I went looking for this nation of blacks that were in the Americas in the 1500s. They were talking about the conquistadors as being the ones who had seen this nation of blacks. So I went looking and found books and writings and illustrations and maps that had nothing to do with the Kali, but had everything to do with what blacks had been doing in the Americas from eventually what I found going on more than 22,000 years from the time of the foundation of Egypt. That surprised me to see writings that were showing Africans coming across the seas into the Americas and forming Egypt, what became known as Egypt. They did not call themselves Egypt, in the Americas. And when I say Americas, mostly I'm talking about Central America and South America, though there were cities and communities in North America as well. I found the records in Egypt and in other places, ancient records, that were talking about what had happened in the Americas, a full history of what these blacks had been doing in the Americas. I saw them building Memphis in what we now call Mexico. I saw Thebes being built in South America. And eventually I saw the place that preceded both of those capitals. Egypt, as some people might know who delved very deeply into the history of those Africans, at first started in another place that some records call This, This, This. And it was said that Menes went from This and went to Memphis and built Memphis. But long before that, because we've got Menes at about 4,000 to 5,000 BC, but the records were showing Amen and Horus and Isis and Osiris and the other names that those are known by in the records, living, it said, about 22,000 years before Alexander the Great. So that's a long way from Amen to Menes. But most records try to pick up the history of Egypt at Menes. They try to start somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 BC. Well, that leaves a lot of that black history unknown, or at least undated. So I saw those things, and from there, I saw the other histories unfold. Once you know that the Old Testament is coming out of Egypt and then taking Egypt's cities, those Africans that we call Hebrews. Well, once you have Egypt in the Americas and you have Hebrews taking the previous Africans' cities that were called Egypt, then that means we have the Hebrews in the Americas as well. And that's what I found. I found those images all over the Americas. I found the cities that they built. They had already been found, many of them. They didn't have their African names on them. Some of them were already being restored by archaeologists, and they were just not telling you that these were the cities that were in the Old Testament and in the Egyptian records. I think secretly many of them knew this. So that would fit into the name of your program, the Occult Science. If it's hidden science, if it's hidden knowledge, that's definitely going to fit, because they knew that these cities were those ancient, classical, and even prehistoric, they call them, cities. So that's where it came from. I saw the records. It's been about 12 years since I found those first cities and the records, and have been working pretty hard from then to now to try to spread the knowledge. This is not the kind of knowledge that you're going to find coming out in USA Today or Newsweek or Time or even National Geographic. I've addressed this with them, and it's just not a subject that they really want to address. I thought it was a racial thing at first, but I came to Facebook several months ago to see. I wanted to test to see what's really going on, where the intellect was, where the resistance was, and I found we have as much resistance in the black side of humanity as we do the other side of humanity to these histories. Blacks are not ready for their own history, especially when we start saying Egypt and the biblical histories are occurring or were occurring in the Americas. They're not ready for that. So that brings us to today. That's where we are. We still battle that battle, and for those who are seeking knowledge and trying to see what happened, we have that, and we're giving that. For those who just can't get it, then, that's another day for them. They'll eventually get it or not. And I don't bother myself too much with that battle.
I see. Excellent. And, that's why, I totally agree, Brother Horace, because many times, I just turned 48 years old, and I've been studying black history and many things for many years. And, when we talk about, when the brothers and sisters here in the United States, when we talk about our history, two things that we always attach to ourselves, ancient Kemet and slavery. And you're absolutely right. I find that, many people, they, to this very day, still believe that black people didn't touch Western civilization shores until we were dragged over here in slave ships. For some reason or another, many of them cannot grasp the fact that we were already here, and we were all over the place. And yes, to this day, you're absolutely right. That knowledge is still being resisted. People hold in their heads that, we didn't see this part of the globe until we arrived on slave ships.
Yeah. Well, I eventually found that even slavery was a part of hiding the information. When Spain came into the Americas in the 1500s following Columbus, they knew what was here. We were taught in school that Columbus was trying to get to the Far East, and he stumbled across the Americas and that kind of thing. That's not what happened. Columbus knew what was over here. The crusades had already been coming to the Americas. I mean, once you have ancient Egypt in the Americas and David taking that capital city of Thebes and making it be Jerusalem, in fact, it was already a city that was close to that name. It was built to honor the African Heru, and they just switched the name just a little bit. Heru became Jeru. But once you understand that Jerusalem was sitting in South America, then you have to understand that this is where the Crusades were coming. So they knew of the history in the Americas. They knew the Holy Lands were here. That's why they're always getting on ships and coming to the Crusades. You could walk from where they're calling themselves Italy and France, and you could walk to that place they're now calling Middle East, but they were always in ships because you can't walk to the Americas from that Italy there. You got to get in ships. And when I would look at those ancient accounts, not ancient, when I would look into the medieval accounts and some of the ancient ones to try to follow them on their voyage, it would always stop at the ports. It would be that they were getting in the ships, and then there would be a series of periods or something showing that this text has been deleted or it's not there or not important. And then they would arrive at the Holy Land or at Constantinople, which was in the Americas as well. And then they would go to the Holy Land. Even when you would see these movies, that were coming out of Hollywood, when they would address that part of the subject, they would say things like, well, to find your way to the Holy Lands, to find your way to ancient Jerusalem, go to where the men speak Italian, and then, get on the ships and then go to the place where they speak it no more, that kind of crap. But really what they were saying is they were getting into the ships at Italy, and then they were sailing across the Atlantic, and they were coming into the Americas, and then they were making their way to the Holy Land. So Columbus knew this, the churches knew this, Spain knew this. The problem was not, we don't believe that there's a land over there. The problem was the last time they had come over with these armed forces, they had gotten so devastated and they had been defeated so well that they had stopped coming. They did not try it again. The blacks and the others here had said, you slaughtered us so mercilessly in your first crusade and in the others that we are finally at an end of you. So if we see you again, we're going to return the death on you that you brought to us. And so a lot of the people quit coming to the Holy Lands in the Americas, and those became known as the Dark Ages, because when you're not in a land and you're in Europe, you don't know what's going on in the Americas, and that becomes a dark era. You don't know what's going on in the Holy Lands. So, that preceded Columbus coming over. So Columbus's battle with the churches was not that I know how to get to Japan or something. That wasn't what the conversation was. It was, okay, once you get over there, if we're going to invest in this, how do we know that these ships are going to return, and how do we know that this is just not going to be death, that people are not going to just be killed once you get back over there. And so the secret order to Columbus was, okay, we want you to go to Panama, where Egypt long ago had started building the canal. Because once we go over into the Caribbean to reach Jerusalem, we still have to get to the Pacific side so that we can get to that city in South America that is and was ancient Jerusalem. So his order was, get to Panama, see what the military situation is, see if we really can take that place. We want to launch one more crusade and try it one more time. And Columbus came into the islands, where we now have Haiti and Dominican Republic and some of the others. And I guess he got a little afraid himself. He didn't come into the mainland. And he kind of got addicted to the drugs and the women and the other things, trying to find gold. And eventually they sent soldiers to put him in chains and to bring him back to Spain, and to tell him, you didn't fulfill the obligation. The obligation was for you to check the military situation at Panama. And so on his fourth voyage, he made a beeline from Spain to Panama to check the situation, to check if it was, in fact, lightly enough guarded that they could launch an invasion and take that place. And then he went to South America, didn't go into it. He pretty much stayed on those ships. But he made this strange comment when he got to the Orinoco River that's coming out of the northern coast of South America. And he says, this river has its origin in paradise. It was one of the strangest things to be written by him. There was one other that's stranger, but this one was strange, unless you knew that this was where the ancient cities and the ancient histories had occurred. And he was right. The Orinoco River does originate in the mountains of South America, where Jerusalem and some of the other holy places were, and where Adam had lived. Adam, do I want to say this? Let's hold this one. Adam
no, this is Occult Science Radio. There's no hold barred here.
We'll bring him out later. Adam is in the Egyptian records. He is named in the Egyptian records very clearly. You will see him under the name Atum, and Atum becomes Adam. He is Amen. He is the founder of Egypt. That's your Adam of the Genesis account, of the biblical account. It's Atum. Atum becomes Adam. He's the same guy. And it's Amen, under his several names of Amen and Amun and Amun and all of those. So when you get into the biblical records, you're going to get to Revelations 3 and 14. You're going to see a strange verse that talks about this man called Amen, A-M-E-N, who lived at the first of creation. Well, for you to understand that, you have to understand that Genesis is not talking about the creation of the world. That's a mistake that we thought Genesis is talking about. Genesis is a record of Egypt, of the African nation, the empire that became known as Egypt. These are the Egyptian priests writing the history of their nation. And that part was adopted and put into the biblical writings along with later accounts of what was happening in Egypt. And so they're beginning it at the formation of Egypt, when Amen lived. That's why when Cain kills his brother, he's concerned that people in the world will kill him for the murder that he's committed. And it says that when he left this place, he went into a city and took himself a wife. Well, if you've got Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and now Cain has slain his brother, you don't have a city you can go to. You don't have a city of people. You're at the beginning, if this is the beginning of the world. But that's not what that's about. That's an African record about the history of the African civilization that became known as Egypt. Columbus and the churches knew that in his day. He talked about this river Orinoco coming down out of the mountains and saying it originated in paradise. The other strange thing that Columbus mentioned and wrote about, and Washington Irving put it into his biography of Columbus as well, was that Columbus would go around talking about how he was going to capture Jerusalem when he made it into the Americas. Now, some scholars will argue, no, he did not say that he was going to capture Jerusalem in the Americas. Well, we don't have any record of him going to the Middle East to try to capture it over there. He knew that it was over here, and he really did have these high dreams that he would lead the crusade that would recapture ancient Jerusalem. So when we talk about slave ships and that era, we have to understand that after Columbus, then they sent the armies back in. He had done some of the surveillance work to see where the armies were, some of it. And then they came in. Now, here's the strange thing. When you see Spain come in and capture Mexico, and when they write this history, when Prescott and others wrote this history of the invasion of the Americas, they title it The Invasion and Capture of Mexico and the Invasion and Capture of Peru. Well, if you look on anybody's map, you'll see how far those two lands are apart. And to find Peru, you really have to know something about the Americas, because it's hidden in a mountain on the backside of South America. Well,
wow.
In a mountain and the other ones. But when you talk about an invasion, and you're talking about capturing two places that are as distantly related as Mexico and Peru, that should signal you that something is going on. But that's exactly what was happening. They were capturing the capital, the ancient capital of Egypt, Memphis, that was built in Mexico. That's why all those pyramids are all over that place. And then they went and captured Jerusalem, the other Egyptian capital that had been Thebes in South America. So the clues are everywhere for you to see it. And once it's open, then you can.
Wow, this is powerful. I'm sitting here, I'm in total awe, because this is all very groundbreaking information. But I wanted to touch on something, brother, that you and I had been discussing just the other day. And just the information that you revealed then, just blew me away. You were talking about Delphi. And please, brother, that's what I had been wanting to lead up to, because the little bit of information you dropped off on me then, that's why I was so anxious for this evening to come, because I really wanted you to expound on that. Yeah, please share your views and your knowledge on Delphi.
Okay. Before we get to Delphi, let's put in one thing, because if your listeners are like others who have heard this, they're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, there's a problem in all this. We've got pyramids on the Nile in Northeast Africa. We have Egypt there. Why would you say that Egypt is in the Americas when we can clearly see that Egypt is right here where these pyramids and the Sphinx are? To clear that up, you have to understand that there was an African civil war in the Americas. The biblical writings refer to it in their writings under the book called Exodus and some of those nearby. When these blacks revolted and had this civil war against the other blacks that were Egypt in the Americas, that tore Egypt apart. When you read what was happening in those wars and the killings, the outright slaughters, they will shame what's happening at Rwanda and some of these other places now. Or they will show you that those same kinds of horrendous things were going on in ancient times. And that's what was happening. And they had the upper hand. They were stronger under Moses and Joshua and some of these other African leaders, and they were winning against these African cities that were Egypt. And when you read that they were going to destroy them to their very root, was the understanding. Then those that were able got out of the Americas. They fled, that were running Egypt. And they they couldn't go to West Africa because that was one of the bases for the blacks that were known as Hebrews. They had made it to West Africa out of the Americas before they launched their attack on the Americas. So they couldn't go to West Africa. That was the strength. That was walking into the mouth of a lion. So they went around to the eastern side of Africa and formed a second civilization there, an offshoot of the one that had come here. Now, to be clear, the Africans who had formed the Egypt in the Americas had come from Africa to begin with. So the ideas that they brought to the Americas were already flowering in Africa. And when you look at Chepset's temple on the Nile, the ancient temple there, you know, it's clearly written when they talk about the expeditions to Punt that Egypt's understanding was that they had come from a civilization that was on the eastern side of Africa where this expedition went to. And you can look at the animals that are being loaded on the ships in those drawings, and you can get an idea about where that place was and about where at least the Egyptians during the time of Hatshepsut were saying that they thought they had originally come from. So if the Africans from Eastern Africa had made their way into the Americas and that became the beginning of the Egypt in the Americas, so be it. But now they had come back to the eastern side of Africa and started building that Egypt. So archaeologists would tell you we see all these monumental buildings going on from the 12th dynasty coming forward. And that's exactly where I found the autobiography of Moses. It was in the 12th dynasty of Egypt. So it's all right there in the records for you to see what was going on and to be able to piece this thing together. Once they got to the eastern side of Africa, now you've got two Egypts. And eventually that Egypt came back in, got as strong as it had been at first, and reconquered its cities in the Americas. And you'll see those wars and those narratives from then on, where they're coming in, they're regaining, and then losing, and then regaining the Americas. Under Pianke, there is a very enlightening record left by that pharaoh. And you will see a part of Brazil still named for him. You know, and people don't discern it. You know, here is Pianke's name, first and last, on these two large districts against the Atlantic coast of Brazil, above the place that's called Sir Egypt del Rey, which meant belonging to the king of Egypt. That still shows on the map too, Sir Egypt del Rey. So you have this land that belonged to Egypt in South America that shows on the maps. And then right above it, you have this huge area of land, two districts. One carries the first name of Pianke, and the second district carries the second name. But under Pianke, he says he came from that area over to Peru, and then he's leaving an itinerary of where he's going in his reconquest of the cities. And he's traveling up through Central America in ships, and he's telling you where the cities are, the ancient cities are. And he's telling you where he's stopping and what he's doing. And eventually he makes it to Mexico, where Memphis was. And he leaves. He left this record that tells you that when he got to Memphis, he just started cursing, you know, because it was out on an island, and they could find no way to attack this city that was out on this island. And black historians don't quite get it. They did not understand that ancient Memphis had been built on an island out in the middle of a man-made lake. A man-made island built out in the middle of a man-made lake. And not in the middle, but out in the lake itself. And this became one of what they call the ancient wonders of the world. It was the lake called Tashi. And that lake was still there when the Spaniards came in the 1500s, and they drew illustrations of it, and they wrote about it, you know, and black historians are missing all of this good stuff because they're not turning their sights to the right places. They're not putting the ancient narratives against what they're seeing in the Americas. They want to follow Dr. Van Sertima's groundbreaking work, and I don't know if it's the correct thing to say groundbreaking, since there were others that were influencing Dr. Van Sertimer, and he was extending their work. But what he was writing about was a black presence, and for some reason, no one had gone in to check the narratives, the ancient black narratives, to see if they were describing the Americas, and they were. So when you go into those ancient narratives, one of the things you're going to find out is that other blacks came from West Africa into Central America during another horrendous war, the war called Troy. That's a black war. That's an inter-African war called Troy in Central America. And it's bringing thousands of blacks out of Africa into this major event. And some of them, many of them, stayed in the Americas and started forming other cities on top of Egypt's cities and building other ones outside of those satellites. And that became known as Achaea, or ancient Greece. African. The Greeks are African, not the people now claiming the name. The ones who are in your ancient narratives, these are Africans. And they were in the Americas, and so when they're building these cities, and they're building them often on top of other cities or extending the other cities, so this becomes Athens, and then you have Sparta sitting there. You have Delphi and Delphi. They have the different ways they want to say it, but, anyway, Delphi is sitting there. It's sitting there. Delphi, you will have the Greek accounts from the historians, from the Greek historians, the African historians called Greeks. And they're telling you the history of the city. And when your eyes are open and you're reading the ancient narratives, you will understand that here is the same place that ancient Egypt was talking about as well. And the biblical record is talking about it too, because this is one of the most famous oracles in all the world. Here is where the people came, the leaders came, the presidents of the nations, their pharaohs, would come and ask the oracle, what say you? What should I do? Should I invade? Should I fight this? Should I join this alliance? What does God tell me I should do? And the oracle is sitting there at Delphi in Central America. And this is the place that Horace had come and taken once he defeated Cain, the biblical Cain, who is ancient Egypt's Khan, Khon. Once he defeated Heracles or Khan or Khonsu, now he's in power, and he makes this oracle become his. So its history goes all the way back 22,000 years before Alexander the Great. That temple is sitting there. That oracle is sitting there. And they would have games there, like the Olympic Games. These are the Pythian Games, every 4 years. And you will see what they call ball courts. When you find modern white scholars, they go all over the Central America looking for the ball courts, the Maya ball courts. These are not ball courts. These are the stadiums where they were having these athletic and musical games and competitions. This is the Delphi Games, and that's why you're going to have a stadium there for the competitions that were going on there at Delphi. But now we're up to date. So let me bring us to this year. You asked about the place, Delphi.
Oh, yeah.
I found the ancient African records that described everything about the city, from the way the city is laid out, from the hills to the river, the situation, where it was, where the river is, where the stadium is, which monuments are there, what they look like. It named them, showed you where they are. And then it came to this amazing building. And they say, in this building are the paintings where the warriors would gather and talk. This is the painted temple. And then it would go in and start describing the scenes that are painted on the wall. And you have over 200 people painted in this temple. And Agamemnon, the African called Agamemnon is there, and the African called Achilles is there, and the African that was David's mother, King David's mother is there, and the famous Africans and that were called Greeks and the famous Africans that were called Trojans are painted all over this temple with their actual portraits by one of the most famed painters at that time.
Wow.
And the descriptions are there. And they tell you, here is Agamemnon, and this is what he has up under his left arm. This is what he's wearing. This is the kind of helmet he has on. This is what he's doing with his hand. He's standing. The man before him is kneeling. The one to the side of him is laying down. The one behind him is Achilles, and this is what he has on, and this is what he's doing. And behind him, over to the back, is a woman holding a baby, and the baby is holding his hands up to his eyes. When you have these kinds of descriptions, and then you find a temple in Central America that has every one of these images still painted in it, then you found ancient Delphi. And that's
Wow.
what was found. So when I told National Geographic in 2008, I was going to hold it. I didn't want to give it to them because I knew that ancient record had a lot more information. And I said, if I give this to them, they're going to go into the African king's tomb and start pulling those kings out, just like they're doing in Egypt. And I held it. I held it for 10 years. I just would not give it. But then I said, if I'm not going to be able to get blacks to understand and accept their own history, I've got to get one of the mainstream groups to publish the stories so that our blacks can finally believe their own history. And so I gave National Geographic one of the ancient accounts about Delphi to show them what was there and to show them that temple was described in detail. That was June 2008. And the woman wrote back, thank you, Horace. I am amazed at this, and she's going on. But, Horace, I am not able to, her word, entice the magazine to run the story. And then
Wow.
I went to USA Today. Dan Vergano is the science writer. And Dan seemed to be very, very interested, and we talked, and I shared information with him, and we went back and forth for a couple of months. And he says, I want this story, and then the next thing I heard was my editor won't run it unless a Maya scientist or scholar confirms it. Well, they never confirmed Dr. Van Sertima's findings. In fact, when I talked to one of them in Dallas, he admitted, Horace, there's no Mayanist who values their career who will admit that there is a black presence in pre-Columbian America. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
What?
So they knew what they were asking me to do. They knew that they were asking me to get an approval that was not going to be gotten. See, so that kills that story with USA Today. All right, so then I said, well, let me just talk to an archaeologist, a scholar who I've talked with some years before, and I went to the professor at Harvard, Dr. David Carrasco, and I gave him the same information, said, here's Delphi. Vet it, and I need your help on getting the story broken. And he was very interested, and all of a sudden the contact stopped, couldn't reach him, he was gone, and his university finally told me he had taken sabbatical. Next thing I know, the story broke in January of this year that they have found the tomb beneath the painted temple at the city of Bonampak in Mexico. Well, that's Delphi. These are the writings that I gave them. And they did exactly what I knew they would do. They would start pulling out the ancient African kings. And that was their interest. They were not interested in showing the world that this was ancient Delphi and that these were the Africans that were Agamemnon and Achilles. They were not interested in that. They were not going to tell the world that the Greeks were blacks. Their interest was directly into getting to that tomb of that man who was buried, who the description said was buried beneath the painted temple, beneath the second room of the painted temple. And they went directly in it. Now, the explanation they gave was, we found this tomb doing conservation work using sonar. And when I gave that to other archaeologists, they just laughed at it. That's not how we do conservation work. They didn't find that using sonar doing conservation work. They used sonar to see if those descriptions were correct in saying that that was a tomb with a man inside beneath that second room of paintings. And when they saw that those ancient writings were correct, they went into the tomb and published that story. It's everywhere on the net. The tomb discovered at Bonampak in Mexico. So that brings us there. Now, if you are an occult interest in your network, there is an occult attachment to the story. That man that's buried in that tomb was one of the most feared men, one of the most feared men that had lived on the time of the Trojan War. This is Achilles' son, who had desecrated religion and the temples and had done some things that were just so horrendous that when people heard of it, they could not believe that a man had done such a thing to offend God, and at that time, gods. You know, they just could not believe that someone had done what this man had done. And for what he did, the sacrilege he did when he went to Delphi, they killed him. And they buried him in that temple. And that's whose tomb they opened. One of the most feared men. And not long after that, Haiti's grounds crumbled. And you might not understand this, but once that happened, then the rain started falling on Peru and started washing away the roads there. That's a country that hardly experiences rain. But here's a rain so heavy that it washed out the roadways and stranded visitors to Machu Picchu. The grounds broke in Haiti. The rains came at Peru after they went in that man's tomb. Anyway, that's your story of Delphi.
Oh, brother. We're winding down, but we have a couple of calls on the switchboard. We're going to try to take some quick calls. For those of you who are calling in, we're winding down, so please try to make your questions, just keep it to the point, because we want to try to get the questions in. And we're going to take our first caller from the 803 area code. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, peace, bro.
Peace. How are you?
I'm good. Y'all giving out some excellent information, man. Really enjoying the show. I had a question for the brother. Is this newfound information that you got, is it in your book, or are you going to make revive that in your book if it's not?
Delphi is not in the book. The book establishes the geography of where the places were. It lets you know where the things happened, what happened. It gets you ready for the people. And then the second attempt was to bring you King David and the people that led up to King David, and to start putting the understanding of the people on the table as well. But the book it's going to hold you. It's so much information in that book that when publishers saw it, they actually wanted to break it up into 3 different books. So it's a lot of information there, a lot of information. Once you come out of When Rocks Cry Out, at the end of that reading, you're going to be ahead of the curve, and you will know things. And more than that, the things that are in that book are footnoted. So it'll tell you where the text came from that I'm using. So you'll see it's not my opinion. You can see where I got it from, and you can go, and if you're really sharp, you're going to go into these writings and find everything else that's in those writings as well. I couldn't put everything in that book and keep it in a size that people would read.
Yeah. So how can I get your book? You got a website?
Everywhere online. Everywhere online.
Amazon.
You can even walk into a Barnes & Noble and they can order it. The problem is, they said, it's crazy, but I'm going to have to tell you anyway. When I first wrote this book, an agent came in and she said that she could guarantee a large advance on the book if I would take out the black presence and take out the biblical discoveries.
What?
Yeah.
That's not surprising. That's, to me,
no.
brother, that's not surprising the way they...
No, it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Well, what she said was, and I asked her the why, and she said, well, if we're going to give you a six-figure advance, we'd like to know that we'll be able to get our money back. Now, the deal is, the way she explained it was that there are some blacks who are interested in black history, but it's such a small group compared to the whole of the readership group that they were not confident that they would be able to earn back a large advance paid on it. But that if I only gave them Egypt being discovered in the Americas without putting in the black, without putting in Jerusalem and the biblical, that they had a huge readership for ancient Egypt, and that they would welcome that book and pay a large advance for it and go forward for it. So when I would not take that out, then of course that kills my invitation from New York to publish the book. So we had to get it done other ways. But still, I got it produced by the largest book distributor in the world, Ingram. And so Ingram distributes everywhere, and they are the major distributor. So wherever Ingram distributes, you can get that book, and including Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and Barnes & Noble store itself, and almost everywhere online you'll see it. And not in just the United States. It's also printed in Europe.
All right.
Okay, brother, we have to move on to our next caller because we're winding down. But, Brother Horace, we'll be back. But check Occult Science Radio's main page. It's featured right there, and you could order it right there. But thank you very much for calling in, brother.
All right, thank you.
Much appreciated. And we're going to take our next caller from the 704 area code. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am. My question is more focused on what happened to, like, all of the Africans that ended up in Brazil? Were they there because they were, Africans that migrated there, or were they brought there as slaves?
Well, they will tell you that when you find these major pockets of Africans in South America, and even at the place where Ivan Van Sertima had come from in Guyana, they'll tell you that's a remnant of what was brought over during slavery. There were slaves, and there were not slaves. There were Africans kidnapped and taken out of Africa and brought into South America, of course. But when you have over 22,000 years of history of blacks in the Americas, they didn't all pack up and leave the Americas when Spain came in and started invading. So, yeah, you're going to have the black cities, the ancient black cities, and the blacks themselves and their descendants in South America. So Brazil was major. It's my belief that whole nation called Brazil is named for the African who saved King David. You'll see that in the Old Testament writings that when his son took the city, Absalom came in to take David's throne, he fled. And he went to West Africa. He went to Mali. They call it M-A-H-L-I, but it's Mali. It's M-A-L-I, Mali in West Africa. And that the king there who took him under his wing and kept him, who kept King David, was, they'll call him Mount Barzillai. But you just flip your R and your A and put it where it is. So either Brazil should be Barzillai, or the king's name in the Old Testament should be spelled a little differently. But I'm thinking Brazil is named for their king that helped David. In fact, when you read the biblical accounts, south of the Amazon River is Moab. which is going to put you right back in West Africa where this king was. So all those things are related. Yeah, there are Africans that were in the Americas long before the transatlantic kidnapping began.
Okay, so then my next part of that question would be, if they were already there, did they become enslaved by the people coming from Europe and, you know, the other countries?
Yeah, well, you know, if you hung around and did not know how to escape or could not escape that armed invasion, maybe sometimes you would be forced into servitude.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be a part of it. They did not treat them as though they were different people than the Africans they had brought into the Americas. To them, an African was an African.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to get the book. I ordered it last week from Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling in, sister. Excellent questions. Excellent questions. And, yeah, believe me, time flies when powerful information is being brought forth. We have about 4 minutes left, brother. And, yeah, you know, as I always say, we're just touching the surface tonight. You know, I'm already sitting here in my mind and planning your next appearance because, you know, you have, judging from the feedback we're getting from the chat room, oh, yeah, everyone is primed, you know. But just take a minute or two to let everybody know, you know, to repeat where we can get the book and what you got coming up.
Well, you know, like I said, online, When Rocks Cry Out, you can find it most online places. The readers are saying that Barnes & Noble seems to have the faster delivery. Usually in about 2 days, they're having their book once they order it at Barnes & Noble. Amazon is probably right behind them. The problem with Amazon is that there are sellers from Europe who are selling on Amazon. They're selling their copies. And if you're not careful, you will save you a couple of dimes, you think, by buying their book, but they're shipping it from Europe, so it's going to take longer to get that. But other books coming out of Amazon are shipped just as quickly as Barnes & Noble. Just be careful who your seller is. Coming up, there is a second book already written. This one I wanted to go into novel form. I saw that readers really want a story. They really want a novel, much more so than they do the nonfiction account. Though When Rocks Cry Out is written in a very readable narrative form, because it was rewritten to do just that. But the next book should be a fiction. It should be a novel, and we're going to roll in the historical accounts that are real into a story that I think you'll really enjoy. The literary agent Manny Barron said that it was a new genre of black literature, and when you read this, I think you'll understand what he was talking about.
I see, brother. Not just coming from me, but coming from the entire family. We want to extend heartfelt thanks to you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us this evening. And as I stated previously, welcome to the family. You know, this is your home. You know, and oh yes, you are a distinguished family member, and I'm already plotting your next visit, as I said before, because we're just touching the surface tonight. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm mesmerized, and so I can't wait to hear more. But brother, we extend our heartfelt thanks once again to you for taking time out to be with us here this evening. Much love and much respect to you, and everybody, please go out and get this book by Brother Horace Butler, When Rocks Cry Out. Thank you so much, beloved brother.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and to the listeners, get your history. Get your history. It's yours. You know, you get this. This is what we've been looking for a long time. And it finally came. It came. We didn't go get this. It came. And we just happened to transcribe it and make it available. But now we've got it. So I hope that you can appreciate the form that it's in. And look forward to hearing your responses.
Oh, yes. And thank you all as well, beloved family, for being here with us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us on Occult Science Radio. And my name is Curtis Davis, a.k.a. The Illuminated One. And don't forget to tune in to TON, the Occult Network, www.theoccultnetwork.com. Many of the guests that you hear here on Occult Science Radio, you will see their work visually. Thank you once again, beloved family. And as I always say, peace, love, and power. And please, please walk with strength.